Well, good morning, everybody. This is Troy Fullwood with Pinnacle Investments, and I want to thank you guys for attending what I'm going to call our Saturday morning coffee time. And I want to share with you guys what we're doing, and that's the whole reason why I called put this webinar together very quickly. Obviously, it was on short notice, which started going on actually yesterday, and very pleased with the response we had and the people that signed up for today's call. Hopefully, everybody will make it. If they don't, we'll shoot them the recording of the call so they can listen to it here at their convenience. But here's one of the things that in an ever-changing world of real estate, and the fact that deals are becoming harder and harder to find, and good deals are becoming harder and harder to find. And people are looking at different ways to market and to go out and, create different relationships and different angles, avenues, different techniques that are being used in the marketplace. And what I find rather interesting about all of it is that everybody keeps forgetting the number one source of deal flow. And the number one source of deal flow automatically is the banks and the institutions, because they're the ones that lent the money. And the banking institution is a $10 trillion industry, $10 trillion. And that being said, they're the ones that consumers went to. They're the ones that lent the money to the homeowners, and they're the ones that took on the financial responsibility of that relationship with homeowners. And that's their model. I mean, that has been their model for decades, if not centuries at this point. And we all know that because we've all, at some level or some time or another, have borrowed money from a bank. And whether that was for a house or car or a credit card or a student loan or SBA loan or whatever it is, we borrowed money from a bank because why? Because the banks had the money. So there's no mystery to it. And what I find interesting about the current industry condition is the more things change, the more they stay the same. And so gurus are out there trying to, come up with new techniques and like subject tos and things of that nature. And that's okay. There's a market for that. It's a really, really, really tiny market, but there's a market for that. And people are doing that, and they're over here buying apartment complexes and doing this and doing that. But what's funny about all of this stuff that they're doing is they're doing it on the retail level. Okay, they're doing it on the retail level, or what they like to say off market. Because they say off market, they get a better deal, and maybe sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I don't know all the numbers to each deal, but to them, it's, what do they say, less competitive. If it's an off market deal, then there's no competition or little competition about that deal. And I would have a tendency to agree with that statement. But if you're going to be off-market deals, then let's really do off-market deals. Let's go directly to the source, and let's deal directly with the source that has the product, and let's level up our game so that we can deal directly with the source. And here's the funny part about it. It doesn't really require much leveling up to deal directly with the source, because all the bank cares about is if you want to buy product from them, that you do your due diligence, you give them a fair price, and you buy the product. That's it. That's all they care about. They don't have any loyalty to you or me or anybody else because they're an institution. So they're just wanting to move what I would call distressed assets or toxic assets off their books, things like REOs, NPLs, commercial, residential, first lien, second liens, broken land developments, land, any of those things that are, weighing them down in their financial structure. They want to get those off the books. They want to get those off the balance sheets, especially when it comes to quarterly reporting time. They want to make sure that they're moving the needle all the time for their quarterly reports that they have to file with the federal government, technically the federal government and the FDIC. And that's a requirement for being in the banking industry. It just is. So they want to make sure that they're constantly moving that needle. And they understand that being in the banking industry, that there's always going to be a percentage of borrowers that will ultimately default. No matter how good their underwriting is, no matter how good the borrower is when they originally started the loan, bad things happen to good people all the time. And sometimes that's divorce, sometimes that a family member is lost, sometimes that's job loss, career loss, medical challenges, whatever it may be. Bad things happen to good people all the time, and that unfortunately changes their circumstances. And sometimes those circumstances are so, I say, deeply changed that they have to let go of things that they purchased, like houses and cars and things like that. That being said, the banks know that, but it's a percentage of their risk. And when that happens, they want to get that asset off their books as quickly as possible, or they want to solve it as quickly as possible, whether it's a loan mod, short sale, foreclosure, or if it's not worth the foreclosure, then they'll hold it as an NPL in their, I say, portfolio until somebody comes along and buys it. Now, here's the funniest part about this, is the more people I talk to, the more I realize that people are intimidated to talk to banks. They're scared to death, and I can't figure out why they're so afraid of talking to a bank. Every banker I've ever talked to, no matter what level of status they have in the banking organization, they've always been incredibly friendly, and they've always been very helpful, because I'm coming to them to solve their problem. Okay? I'm coming to them to solve their problem. And they want the problem solved because they have to answer to shareholders. They have to answer to the powers to be. Just because there's a CEO or a CFO and he or she might be the captain of the ship, that doesn't mean they own the ship, if that makes sense. So they have to report to that ownership party, or the multitude of them, on a regular basis, and they have to report the good part of what's going on, and then they have to report, what's not so good, and then they have to have answers to what's not so good, because that's what the ownership wants. When you're an investor in the world of investing, you know that there are going to be challenges and problems and things of that nature. But the question is, how do you solve it? Do you have a captain of the ship that knows how to solve the problems, meaning there's always more than one, and can they do it efficiently, effectively, and rapidly? And that's why people are hired to do those jobs. So that being said, I want to share with you guys what I've been doing. I've been doing this for a long time, but I don't really talk about it too much on any one level. I think the last time I talked about this was actually last year about this time. But that doesn't mean I stopped doing it. I just kept doing it quietly behind the scenes, which is pretty much my ammo. If you don't hear a lot from me, that's because there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and we're busy doing a lot of other things. But let me share something with you guys here. See that? I'll make sure you see that. All right, good. So I built this software several years ago, and we update I update this software every 90 days because I want the latest and greatest information that's coming out of the banking institutions. And I tap directly into the FDIC, which is public domain, and I can go in there and I can pull data points off of every single bank's report, quarterly reports. And there's particular data points that I had programmed into the software and what it is that I'm looking for out of every single report. Now, mind you, these reports that are filed by the banking institution, their quarterly reports, depending upon the bank and the size of the bank, they could be, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages long. And I don't want hundreds, I don't want to dig through hundreds of pages to find what it is I'm looking for. I just want to know what I'm looking for and have the software do it. So I had the software built called Bank Direct Connect. We had it updated here recently to a 2.0 version. And what Bank Direct Connect does is it allows me, this up here, to go in and I'm going to show you kind of let me show you. So on the front cover of it, we've got every single bank or every single state, blah, 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 all 50 states, the number of banks that are in various stages of distress, meaning they've got product, the amount that they have in REOs, the amount that they have in NPNs, and I believe there's a total of 5,500 banks total. I didn't total it out here. Yeah, 5569 is the number of banks here. Now there's a total of 7,800 banks in the country. I'm not talking branches, I'm talking banking organizations. So every quarter there's 7,800 reports that come into the FDIC. And the question is, who wants to go through 7,800 reports every 90 days to find product that they can buy directly from the bank? Well, not me. And I don't know about anybody else, but I haven't seen anybody raise their hand. So that's why we built this software that ultimately goes in behind the scenes every quarter and pulls particular data points. Now, these are the data points that it pulls. It goes to every state, and you can see the states are listed here. And then I can choose bank asset size, so I can go from none to none, or I can go from 5 million all the way up to 3 billion. So I can search in regional banks, or I can pick, you know, bigger banks. I actually bring up the maximums as well. So I've got minimums and maximums, so I don't put anything in there, then it just pulls everything in that area. I can do REOs in land and construction. I can do it in multifamily. I can do it 1 to 4 residential, and I can do it non-farm, non-residential. Okay. Now those are the 4 data points that I'm looking for REOs. When it comes to NPNs, I'm looking for family, 1 to 4 family construction, multifamily, residential first lien, residential junior lien. So those of you out there that like junior liens, second liens, sometimes third, that would be this here. You got construction, land development, residential, revolving, open-ended loans, so like HELOCs, things like that. Owner-occupied, non-farm, non-residential, other non-farm, non-residential. So these are come in the area of things like, what do you call it, like commercial properties. You're talking like shopping centers, strip malls, medical facilities, churches, you know, things that you understand where I'm going with that. So I can come in here and I can very easily say, let's pick, I'm gonna pick kind of a smaller state because California, it may take a moment, but so I got Arizona and I just want to see, let's see if there's any REO multifamily. Now each report is a customized report, so I can't pull like 1, 2, 3, all the REOs in Arizona, but I can go in and do a multifamily in Arizona, okay, if that makes sense. So let's say Arizona, REO, multifamily, let's see what happens. No banks match, okay? That's a good thing. When I say it means it's a good thing, it means that we don't have those types of assets sitting around. Now let's say 1 to 4 units, let's see what happens there. So we've got 2 banks. We've got the Commerce Bank of Arizona, and we've got Western Alliance Bank of Phoenix. Now, I would have never thought about these 2 banks having any kind of product. So they're not a common bank. I live in Arizona. They're not a common bank unless you subscribe to them. I've heard of Western Alliance. I've never heard of Commerce Bank of Arizona, obviously, because it's in Tucson and I'm here in Phoenix. But one's in Tucson, one's in Phoenix. And the Western Alliance Bank, it's got $1 million. Commerce Bank looks like they've got a small amount, looks like about 4,000 in REOs. So not a big number there. Total assets, you can see their bank is not very big as a whole either. But I can very easily come here, say, okay, they've got 1.3 million. I can click on this ID number, which pulls up their primary phone number to the head of the bank. Pretty cool, right? Who else, like those of you out there listening, tell me a state and what you want to find out, and I'll pull it up and see if it's there. So while you guys are watching, let me go and pull another one. So I come here. Let's do residential first liens, NPNs in Arizona. Everybody always wants NPNs in Arizona. Here we go. So residential first lien NPNs for AZ. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 banks. We've got Mojave, Commerce Bank of Arizona again, Tucson, Western Alliance. Now look here. So the Commerce Bank of Arizona in REOs, they had, it looked like about 4,000. It wasn't a big number. Here they got 304 million in NPNs. Okay, total and not accrual status, and they've got 130 million in 130,000 in 30-day lates. This is actually 304,000. Sorry about that. So you can see they don't really have a lot, but like I said, it's a smaller bank. But here's the cool thing about smaller banks. If you're a person living down in Tucson and you want to buy some NPNs in the Tucson marketplace, smaller banks are great banks to go deal with. Why? Because you don't have the big building facade. You don't have the big building monster that is staring you in the face that can oftentimes be intimidating. What you have in the smaller banks, the community banks, are down-to-earth people who are running 2 to 3 branches, maybe 5 or 6 branches, and they're business people. They're entrepreneurs. They're growing banks, and they're growing their business overall, and they need to move product on a regular basis, okay? So you or I reach out to them like, hey, I'd like to take a look at your NPNs. I guarantee you there's probably not an investor out there that's ever reached out to this bank, say, hey, do you have any NPNs I can buy from you? And if so, can I take a look at them? And if so, what's your pricing expectation? What do you need out of these? And then you take those numbers and you run it through one of our softwares, and it tells you what you would pay for something like that. So that's how you navigate through that and buying deals directly from the bank. Now you got to have the money to buy these deals, and whether that's you're pulling money from an IRA partner or private lender partner or a hard money lender partner, whatever it may be, you got to have the money to buy these things, which is not that hard to find either. But first and foremost, this is where all the fish are. This is where all the nuggets are at. Go on here, Goldwater Bank, they've got 780,000. Arizona Bank and Trust, they got $1 million basically. Western Alliance Bank, they got $8 million. Okay, $8 million in NPLs in the Phoenix marketplace. Okay, so this is how you find deals in your area. This is how you start relationships in your area. Think about it. If somebody went out there, and I'm just telling you, I haven't contacted any of these banks. I know Goldwater, I know Pinnacle, I know Arizona Bank and Trust, Western Alliance, I told you I knew that. I've never heard of Horizon, never heard of Commerce, never heard of Mojave, but they're also outside of my normal stomping ground, but they're still valid deals. If you go in there and you create relationships with just these 6, 7 banks here on a regular basis, do you think they're going to keep sending you products as product comes up? Do you think they're going to let it sit on the books as long as they do? They're not going to let it sit on the books because you become a proven buyer. You become a proven relationship that they're going to want to cultivate, okay? All right, let me go back here. I know you guys got a couple questions. Let's pull some stuff up. Dan in New Jersey. Let's start at the top and work our way down. Dan, what are you looking for? I'm assuming you want to, well, I can just pull up New Jersey, everything there. Oh, sorry. Yeah. 77 banks in New Jersey. So the bigger the list, it takes a little bit more time, just kind of FYI. So here's all the banks in New Jersey that have product. This top bank or Tani Bank, they've got 1 million, 1.5 million in REOs. They've got 13 million in NPNs. Amboy has got 32 million in REOs, and they got 44 million in NPNs. Investors Bank, they've got 5 million, 5.1 in REOs, and they've got 169 million in NPNs. So you can see the quote unquote, just because the gurus aren't running around talking about the NPNs and REOs and stuff like that, doesn't mean that they've dried up. It doesn't mean that they went away. The problem is still there. It just doesn't have the hype to it. Well, that's a great thing for you and me. Now the hype's gone away. Where'd the competition go? They went off to the next shiny object. And they went off chasing the next shiny object. I'm like, stop chasing the shiny object and focus in on the business of what it really takes to build these relationships. And then they'll constantly feed you deals on a regular basis. You see my point? Let's see here. Indiana. Let's see. Indiana. Here we are. Indiana's got 106 banks. That's a lot of banks with product. So People's Bank in Indiana, 226,000, 2.3 million in NPNs. Like, look at this bank here, the Edelfield Bank, State Bank. So if you're calling a bank and they don't have anything, and this is oftentimes what happens with people, is they'll call banks randomly, and one of two things is happening, okay? They're either calling a bank that doesn't have any REOs, like this one here, Eberfield Bank, or they're doing it incorrectly. And when I say incorrectly, most people want to call a bank, they want to start from the bottom and go up. Don't ever start from the bottom and go up. There's all these courses and trainings out there saying, we're going to teach you how to get past the gatekeeper. I can show you how to get past the gatekeeper. It's really simple. Start from the top and go down. That's how you get past any gatekeeper in any company, in any corporation, nationwide. I don't care what Grant Cardone says. I don't care what Tony Robbins says. I don't care what anybody else says. I've been doing it for 22 I've been doing it for 30 years in every one of our businesses. If I want to do business with a company, I start from the top and go down. Why? Because the guys and the gals at the top know exactly who I need to talk to get the answers that I'm looking for. So if I call the CEO or the president of the bank or the CFO of the bank, whatever title is captaining that ship, I'm talking to him or her, and although I know they are a decision maker, they're not the one in charge of the daily activity of getting rid of the product. You want to know who is? Bob is over in this department. Sally is over here in this department. And the banks have become really clever about saying, hey, you know what? We're not going to list our assets online. We're not going to have a asset manager. We're not going to have this type of, a collections or an REO department. We're not going to do those things. We're going to take all those numbers and emails off of our websites, and we're going to remove them because we're tired of being inundated with calls of tire kickers and time wasters. So they removed all that stuff. So people are like, who do I call? Well, it's not Ghostbusters. You call the CEO, the CFO, because they're the ones that know that they're the ones who know the players on their team. So if I call, John, the CEO of People's Bank, and say, hey, John, this is Troy Fullwood with Pinnacle Investments. I noticed that you've got some REOs in your inventory. I'd like to talk to you about buying those. Troy, thank you so much for calling our office, but that's not my role here in the bank. I know it's not your role, John, but I know that you know the person I need to talk to. Who would I need to talk to? Hold on, let me patch you through. Let me give you their email address in case it doesn't come through. Let me hook you up with that department. Why does he want that to happen? Because he's hired people to take care of that responsibility. They report to him. He doesn't report to them. See how the chain of command works? So he'll point me in that direction to help that person on his team liquidate toxic assets so it cleans up their balance sheet. No mystery, just logic. Just logic. I've been doing it that way for years. People will say, well, Troy, how did you get into Goldman Sachs? I contacted the chairman of Goldman Sachs. How'd you get into Morgan Stanley? I contacted the guys at the top guys at Morgan Stanley. That's what I did. And I do that with the New York Stock Exchange. I do that with every single institution that I play ball with. This is just another version of it. So back to the point here. Sorry about that sidetrack, but a thought came to mind. So this is what's going on in Indiana. Kind of interesting. They got the People's Bank, and then they got People's Trust and Savings Bank. Okay. But you can see there's quite a bit of product here throughout the Indiana marketplace, which is pretty cool. Just keeps going and going and going and going and going. All right. See here. That one was answered. Done. That one was done. Virginia, non-performing seconds. All right, let's see what we've got in Virginia. Non-performing seconds. Go over here, a little more customized report. Oh, I keep going. Virginia, non-performing seconds. All right, let's see what we got here. All right. Residential junior liens, NPNs for Virginia. I don't know how many banks are here. And what here? 41 banks. Is that right? 41, 39 banks. Looks like they got here, they got about 10,000 here in Powell Valley National Bank, but it's a smaller bank, total assets, 277 million. 56,000 here, Virginia Commonwealth, that's in the 30-day late, 19,000 in the 90-day late, and 370,000 in the non-accrual status. See here, it's this bank, National Cooperative Bank, Arlington, Virginia, $2.3 billion in size. They got $133,000 in non-accrual junior liens. Here's the cool thing about this. All of these deals, all of these numbers that I would consider to be small in nature are great bite-sized investments for investors. And these are like, you know how you get that little tiny, like you get a thorn, or you get a cactus sticker, or you get a splinter in your finger, and it's this tiny, 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 tiny little piece of wood in your finger, underneath your fingernail or wherever it may be, but it's just constantly like poking at you, and it's bugging you and it's irritating you, and the only way you can get rid of that irritation is to pull it out. So you gotta like stop what you're doing, get yourself some tweezers, maybe a needle, and do that whole thing. Now I know that might be a little grotesque here first thing in the morning on a Saturday morning, but you get my point. The same thing is true with these seconds. These are not like gonna bring a bank down. Trust me, they're not gonna bring a bank down. But keep in mind, the goal of the banker is to have a perfectly balanced balance sheet. Meaning that when they file their stuff with the FDIC, or they're talking to their, shareholders, that they're saying, hey, we don't have any of that. That problem's solved. That problem's solved. That problem's solved. That problem's solved. And that's what shareholders want to see, because that increases the value of the company, and it allows the bank to focus in on what they want to do in the first place, which is what? Lend money. That's their role. The REO department, the NPN department, the short sale department, loan modification department, those are all like problem departments. Those are all problem departments. So anytime they have to keep those problem departments operating at full capacity and have people managing these problems all the time when they could be used for other, I say, responsibilities in the bank, that is taking away from collectively achieving the goal at hand, which is to lend on assets, lend out money, things like that. Okay? Great one. Here, done. I'm in Florida. Can you search per county? No. You can search Florida. If you know what banks are in what counties, you can do that too. Great question, though. Let me see. North Carolina. Great questions, by the way, guys. Great questions. North Carolina. You see, what was the question again? I'll try North Carolina. All right, I'll just pull up here. There we are. 50 banks in North Carolina have product. Here's your 50 banks in North Carolina. Oh, by the way, for the person that just asked the question about counties, this is one way you can kind of search counties, meaning you can see like the bank city location. So if you know, like in a particular county, like say, like we're in Maricopa County. So what banks would be in Maricopa County? Well, banks that are in Phoenix, Tempe, Mesa, Chandler, Tullison, Goodyear, Scottsdale, Cave Creek. So any of those city locations, as long as you know the cities that are in that county that you're looking for, then you can search that way, if that makes sense. So that's another way of twisting it or looking at it from that perspective. But this is all North Carolina. What do we got here? First Federal Savings Bank of Lincoln Ton, 3.7 million in NPNs. First Savings and Loan Association of Melbourne, and they've got 341,000 in REOs and $1 million, a little bit over about 1.1 million in NPNs. Home Trust Bank in Asheville, 2.8 million in REOs and 13 million in NPNs. So here's what I'm saying. So are you guys seeing the magnitude of this? Nobody's doing this. Okay, nobody's doing this. Nobody's going directly to these banks, and these banks are sitting there kind of like a bump on a log because they don't really know what to do with this stuff. So they've kind of for whatever you want to call it, put a Band-Aid over the situation. They have these assets sitting in inventory, and they're not really even technically assets. They're distressed assets sitting in inventory, and nobody's calling them. Nobody's reaching out to them. Nobody's even introducing themselves to them as a possibility to maybe buy some stuff from them. Now, I don't know the quality of every single asset that they have or every single toxic asset that they have in these numbers, but I do know this. If I don't reach out to them, there's no chance in the world I'm going to get a deal. But if I do reach out to them, I can at least look at their inventory and find out what they have and see if any of it fits my buying matrix. Now, the great thing about that is once you open that door to that relationship, they're going to keep reaching out to you as more and more product comes in. More and more product comes in. Why? Because that's what professional people do. Yesterday afternoon, I got a text from my guys at Morgan Stanley. Asked me, hey, Troy, how's it going? Can we do some more business? Out of the blue, text on my cell phone, directly from their cell phone. That's because I set up the relationship. Now, we haven't done anything in 2019 yet, but I don't know. 2019 is just getting started as a whole. All right, great one there, Bill. Let's see here. Never called banks for properties. This is interesting. Yeah, good one, Angel. Thank you. Alabama. All right, let's do a couple more and then I got to jump back in here. The reason I keep going off on tangents is I'm trying to stick to my plan here today. Here's Alabama. So you jump in here. Got 100 and plus. So here's Alabama. Man, that's a lot of stuff. Wow, that's a lot of banks too. That's 100, 121 minus 2, so 119 banks. Man, look at the amount of product these guys have. Regions Bank alone, Regions Bank, here's a big player. 617 million in NPNs, 73 million in REOs. Now, I'm sure you can find a few deals in there. I'm sure you can. Town and Country National Bank, 117,000 in REOs, 1.2 million in NPNs. So people say that, I review all the NPN markets dried up, the NPN market's done this, the NPN market, it hasn't done any of that stuff. It's just not mainstream media anymore. Why? Because they're too busy talking about the wall and green energy projects and stupid stuff like that. At the end of the day, this is like second nature. This doesn't sell papers anymore. So they're not going to talk about it anymore. And the gurus aren't going to talk about it because the gurus don't know how to talk to the banks. Why? Because they've never dealt with the banks. So at the end of the day, they've run out of things to talk about. So they don't have a course or training to sell you anymore. So they're going to go do something else, which is good for you because now you can save your money at the end of the day. But this is what we've been doing for 22 years. I learned early on in this business. Well, hell, I learned early on because I had 9 different companies in our family as a kid. And everybody that ran companies did it the same way I do mine. And that's every time we start new relationships, we start from the top down. We never start from the bottom up. Why? Because my grandfather owned 2 different banks. And the banks that he owned, I learned by being around them and the people that he was around that they never started from the bottom up. When they wanted to deal with somebody in a banking institution, they reached out directly to that person, which was always the top person in charge. Because their time was valuable, the bank's time was valuable, and out of respect for both parties, they wanted to get answers, and they wanted to get them quickly and efficiently and effectively. And they knew that every single bank out there is driven by different people with different personalities, with different goals and different objectives. So there's not a one-size-fits-all for the banking community. No matter the fact that it says bank on the outside of the building, that's irrelevant. That team of people, that culture in that bank, that tribe, that management, whatever terminology you want to use for it, they all function differently. So, but they all function in a, a personality factor, they all function differently, but their structure is still the same. It's still a pyramid. Top lead guy on top, management underneath them, middle management, low management, totem pole. You get the picture, right? We've seen it for our entire lives. So why not just go to the top and talk with that person at the top and let them tell you who in their organization you need to talk to in turn get an answer on $617 million worth of NPLs from Regions Bank. Who in that organization do they need to talk to? And I go over here and I click on this and I go, cool, there's their phone number. Let me call them. And away I go. So that's the model. That's the model that works. Anybody that's successful in business understands that model. Hands down, they understand it. And it's funny because when I hear people talk about, well, here's how you get through the gatekeeper. Here's how you get through the gatekeeper. You go around the gatekeeper. That's how you get through the gatekeeper. You go around them. And anybody successful in business knows that. But gurus want to teach you how to get through the gatekeeper. You want to know why they want to teach you that? Because it sounds important. And because everybody keeps running into the gatekeeper, well, then just go around the gatekeeper. Just go to the top and work your way down. Because when a person gets marching orders from the boss man or lady and says, here, this message came from John. John says, Bob, you help Troy. Give him our portfolio. Let's work a deal. Guess what Bob's going to do? Exactly what John just told him to do. Right? We've all worked for companies. We've seen that happen time and time and time and time and time and time and time again. All right, cool. All right, what do we got? So many pages open here. All right. Done, Alabama. What do you need to expect after contact and tape? How much do you need to buy? That's a personal decision on behalf of the bank. Bank will let you cherry pick, sure. Do they pitch their junk first? They don't pitch anything. Okay, here's the thing. Banks don't work the way that real estate investors work. Real estate investors have been taught the wrong way to deal with banks and institutions. And banks don't work that way. Banks never have worked that way, which is why you've got this thing going on all the time with banks. You understand? It's like real estate investors show up to the baseball game with a soccer ball, and the banks are showing up with the baseball and bats. And they can't figure out why they can't play together and they can't play nicely together. That's because they're not playing the same game. So if you want to deal with banks and you want to deal with the institutions and you want to get product directly from them at bargain prices and discounted prices and help them clear off their distressed asset portfolio, then you have to play their game. And you show up to the baseball game with what? A baseball, bat, glove, and you move on. That's how you play the game. But it's funny because investors are like, no, banks, you do it our way. And I'm like, that don't work. That doesn't work. Never has, never will. Don't do that. You're wasting your time. And they're like, that bank, those guys are jerks. They wouldn't sell me anything. No, they were willing to sell you stuff. You were just speaking a different language altogether. So at the end of the day, when I'm dealing with banks, yes, they're going to give you whatever their portfolio is. Or if you go in there and specifically ask for an area or zip code, they'll give you that. They'll let you cherry pick. They'll tell you what their pricing expectation is. And then you can back it into the deal and see if that works for you. You can make offers. Hey, bank, I know you wanted $100,000 for this asset. I can't pay you 100, but I can pay you 75. Would you take it? Yes or no? And they'll either take it or they won't. They'll go to committee. They'll look it over. They'll tell you yes or no, or they'll offer another counter back and go forward. And you negotiate from there. But that's how it works. What happens oftentimes is the real estate investor mindset is I'm going to screw the bank because the bank screwed me, and by God, I'm going to get this smoking deal out of them, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And the banks are like, okay, well, we don't want to do business that way. And so they don't engage that way. But they will engage if you're looking at their product and you're saying, okay, and I've looked at bank stuff and I've said, nothing here excites me, so I'm not interested in this. I can't meet your pricing expectations. I'm going to pass on this one. Let me know if you have other stuff down the road. And they'll call me up down the road. That text that I got yesterday from Morgan, the last time I talked to Morgan was in December. And the last time we did a deal was last summer. Here it is, 6-7 months later, and we're still talking. We're still talking. We're still engaged in a relationship. We're still have an open-ended relationship. Why? Because we bought some stuff. We passed on some stuff. Some of their stuff was overpriced. Some of the stuff was priced right. And we developed the relationship. The relationship is not with banks, is not built on deals. That's just the end result. The relationship with banks is built on relationships, humans, you and me, talking to a bank or to another person. We're connecting with that person. We're finding out what their why is. We're finding out what their goal is, and we're helping them accomplish their goal. Why do we do that? Because if we help them accomplish their goal, then we accomplish our goal at the end of the day. And if you go into it with that spirit, you'll be massively successful. Massively successful. Let me show you what I mean by that. Let's see here. So here's a tape that I got from a bank, all REOs. And I'm not an REO guy. I have no interest in fixing, flipping and doing all those other things and yada, yada, yada. I was like, all right, cool, I'll take it. And so I took this tape. I said, all right, calling a few friends. And yesterday, let me see this tape here. Let's see. This is, February of last month. So then yesterday, I sent him this tape about a week ago and said, great, Troy, date 3/1 of, let me make sure we got this up here. It's sharing. All right, yeah. 3/1 of 19, letter of intent, second additional submitment, list of REOs, February of 19. And go down here, and here's all the properties that they're buying. Here's the cool thing about this is I'm going to seller finance all of these properties to these guys. I'm going to buy them all. I'm going to turn around. They're going to give me cash down, the purchase price $1.2 million, cash down of $202,000. I'm selling them to them at 9% interest only for 60 months. Not bad. So I put my money to work. I went in and I bought these. This, by the way, I picked up this all of these assets on this particular tape. Picked them up for 40 cents on the dollar. And then I turned around and sold them for 58 cents on the dollar. So 18%. And then I put my money to work at 9% interest rate, interest only. And on 60 months, picked up a little down payment money there. And away I went. Now, I picked them up at 40% of this. Not bad, right? These are all little low balance deals. These are, deals that are, $5,000 for a house, $80,000. That's a nice one. $36,000, $12,000. Okay, picked them up all day long. Now the banks aren't overly excited about these deals. Why? Because they're low balance deals. They're houses they can't really make a lot of money on. They're houses they can't really, there's no money in the deal for them. So they want to ultimately get rid of those off their balance sheets because they're typically in I say crime-ridden zones, less than ideal areas. They can't make any money on it, even if they list them with a realtor and the realtor sells them and all of these other things. They know that. They know all of that. They're not ignorant to those things. So when you go in there and you're like, hey, if I can clear your balance sheet of these assets, would you be open to it? Yeah, sure, sounds good. So we negotiated a deal and we based it off of the as-is value of the property, not the after-repaired value of the property, the as-is value of the property. And those are the values they gave us. Okay, great, we'll work off of these, we'll start here, and we'll go forward. And I turned around and picked them up for 40 of that, turned around and sold them for 58. So I made 18% spread on the deal for 10 days, 10 to 2 weeks worth of work on the deal, and then I seller financed the rest to these guys. So not a bad deal. Not a bad deal. Put a bunch of money to work. These houses are going to get all fixed up. They're all going to get repaired. They're going to get off the bank's balance sheets. I'm going to put my money to work. I'm going to get a good return on my money. I'm going to let the guys on the streets, the guys and gals, it's only one guy actually buying the whole thing. He's going to fix them all up. He's going to use them all for rental properties, or he's going to sell them off. So it's going to be kind of a combination of both going on. And it's going to be a good thing. So these are the kinds of things that we're seeing and over and over and over again behind the scenes. And it all starts with the Bank Direct Connect software at the end of the day. And let me see here. I think I answered this question. Once you find a bank, do you get to contact him? I contact directly the guy or the gal above. That's what I contact. I start, like I said, I start from the top down. Okay, I don't look for an asset manager. I don't look for an REO department. I don't look for their legal department. I don't look for any of those things. And here's why. See, that's what the gurus say to do, but that's why nobody succeeds. Like, I can't find the asset manager. I can't find the REO department. I can't find the distressed asset department. That's because they don't exist. Okay, they don't exist. They do not exist under those titles. Okay, and that's not public information. Anybody handling the REOs is not on their corporate website. Why? Because they don't want to be inundated with calls from people. They want that person or that team to be moving those REOs off of their balance sheets all the time. And so they typically will reach out to realtors to do those things because that's a proven model at the end of the day. But there are a lot of deals that the realtors don't want to take on that are lower balance deals, like 30, 40, 50, 60, 80, $100,000 deals, because there's no money in it for them. There's no money in it for them. So at the end of the day, they just like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. And so they just sit there. And these houses decay over time because oftentimes nobody's living in them and they're vacant homes. And so therefore, they've got that challenge as well. Keep in mind that these houses that are REOs and things like that, the bank has to keep up the taxes on these houses too. They have to address all the notices, city notices that come into them, meaning the yard's not mowed, there's trash in the yard, there's this, there's that. The house has to be boarded up. There's all of these things that now the bank has to deal with, but they don't want to deal with because those are those are money losing activities. And that's not the business they're in. And so because of the fallout from the downturn in the cycle, they've had to contend with these things which are outside of what they really want to do as a business. But keep in mind, these things are still sitting there. And they'll continue to sit there. And for a very long period of time. Because until somebody comes along, buys the house, fixes up the house, gets it back to a staple of the community or a cleaned up property that is paying taxes and the water's running, electricity's running and things like that, and people are living in it, it's a constant eyesore. But people run away from banks because the reason they run away from them is because they've been taught the wrong things about banks. They've been taught, here's how you get through the gatekeeper. Let me tell you how you get through the gatekeeper. You go around the gatekeeper. You start from the top and work your way down. There has never been one single time that I've ever reached out to a CEO, CFO, COO of any bank, of any organization that said, you know what, Troy, I don't want you calling me. Don't ever call us again. It's like, oh, who are you? Who are you with? Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, we have some NPLs. What are you looking for? Well, we're looking for this, this, and this. Okay, great. Hold on. Let me put Sally on the phone with you. Let me give you Sally's number directly. I'm going to transfer the call. If she's busy, leave her a voicemail. I will also send her an email. By the way, here's her email. Why did they do that? Because they want Sally to sell those toxic assets. They want her to do that. That's her job. But her job is not an official title on a bank website. It's not an office with a title on the door with an arrow pointing here, here, here. That's not what they want. Why? Because they want Sally to move the assets in a very quiet manner. They don't want to draw attention to them. They're at reputational risk. So that being said, they don't want a flood of people coming through the door and bothering Sally. They want Sally just to get rid of the product. and you come along and you've got an answer to their problem, they welcome that with open arms. They welcome that time and time and time and time and time again. Okay, because here's the thing, they're tired of having that conversation about why these assets are still there. Okay, they're tired of having those conversations of why those REOs are still there, why those NPLs are still there. And they have to keep answering those questions every single quarter to the shareholders, to their team, to their management team. Sally has to keep answering to John, and so on and so on. They're tired of having the conversation. It's like a broken record. Because keep in mind, this has been going on for over a decade now. And the conversation is still there. And until they get them off their books completely, the conversation is not going to go away. It's not going to go away. Angel, is there a special program to get these numbers and contacts and info about the banks? I was a little late, sorry. Yeah, it's built into the software, Angel. Maybe you have to go back and revisit it as a whole. One of the things you can do is, I'll just do Alaska here. Is it short? Bank IDs, here's all the phone numbers to every bank out there. All right. All right, so, well, what happened here? All right, ladies and gentlemen. So I want to wrap this up a little bit right at the end of here. I'm trying to do this in 30 minutes, but it actually went to 60. So apologize for that. But hey, here's what you can do. If you guys want to copy this software and all the training that goes with it on how to use it, how to make the contacts, the type of emails that we send, all of those things that go into how we consistently tap into the banking community for deals. You can go to bankdirectconnect.com and grab yourself a copy of it. Now, here's the beauty of it. Not only do I have this for the banks, I also have the same version for the credit unions, okay? Same version for the credit unions, which is really cool because now not only do you have the banking community you can reach out to, but you've got the credit unions that you can reach out to. And anybody who takes us up on the offer of investing in their own copy of Bank Direct Connect also gets the credit union version as well. So you get double the value there. The comes with 5 training modules, walks you through how to use the software, how the software works as a whole, how to reach out to the banks, the emails that I send to banks when I'm following up, the conversations. I actually have scripts in how we work directly with the banks and what we say to the CEOs and CFOs, how I find other people within the bank, the searches that I do to make sure that I'm talking to the right person in the right location in the right area, and how I go about doing that. The beautiful thing about this is that the investment is a one-time investment and it's a lifetime license to the software. We here you don't have to worry about updating the software because it's something that we do in our office. So at the end of every quarter, the banks start filing their reports. It takes about 30 to 45 days for all of the banks to get in their reports, and then we update the software. So that being said, the software is all currently updated, and when the next quarter finishes, 45 days after, we'll update all the software again. So you're constantly getting new data. You're constantly getting new deals, new opportunities, because the banks are selling, and then there's more REO coming into inventory, there's more NPL coming into inventory, and then they're selling, and then they're going back and forth. As you can see, some of these banks have a lot, some of these banks have a little bit. Here's the golden nugget on this whole thing. Guess what Wall Street doesn't want to do? Wall Street doesn't care about these little tiny banks. Wall Street doesn't care about these little tiny deals. Okay, they're not big enough opportunities for Wall Street to care. Okay, so the banks are in this crazy predicament Like, okay, well, Wall Street doesn't want our stuff because we only have $1.5 million worth of NPLs. So Wall Street doesn't want that. It's too small of a deal for them. And we're sitting here with this inventory. The real estate investors of the world are not calling us because, one, we've made ourselves inaccessible to them because we don't have general information of REO department, distressed asset department, things like that, because that's not public information on their website, and they want it that way. Okay, they want it that way. And therefore, they're sitting there relying on realtors to sell their REOs. And a lot of the realtors don't want to do with this stuff because selling a $50,000 home, they make what? $3,000, and then if it's two realtors in it, they each make $1,500. Not overly motivated to make $1,500 and spend 90 days or 120 days selling a home. So they're sitting there like a bump on a log with this inventory, and nobody's reaching out to them because they don't know how to get to them. Okay, the banks have been doing this, pushing everybody away because they were inundated with goofiness. And like, get this goofiness away. That's not who we are. Because people kept trying to come through gatekeepers. So the gatekeepers got really good at kicking people back into play. Okay, don't go through the gatekeeper. Start at the top and work your way down. I already shared that with you. I already gave you that nugget. So the cool thing about this is that nobody's tapping into this market. Why? Because it's not big enough for Wall Street, and Main Street doesn't know how to do it. But the software shows you exactly where to go fishing, which ponds have fish in them, which banks have deals, possibility of deals, whether it's REOs or NPLs, whether it's first lien or second liens, whether it's residential or commercial. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter because the software breaks all that down on a per search basis by simply using the search report button. That's it. The build report button is what we use to update the entire software once a quarter. So you don't even tap into that, but you do your simple search report and go in and grab your copy. So go to www.bankdirectconnect.com. You'll see the sign up page. Grab yourself a copy. We were supposed to shut this down the other day, but we had a lot of people with a lot of great questions. And so I said, well, let's just go ahead and do a quick webinar, show some people some more things, one that we're doing, how the software works in a little bit more detail, answer some questions, which hopefully, I believe we got to all the questions. They're all great questions. Yeah, we got to all the questions. One last question. Your buyer purchased in multiple states to flip and rehab. Just curious. Yes, that's exactly what they did. Yeah. So even though I'm finding stuff in these banks or because I've developed relationships, now mind you, we're only in contact with about 50, 55 banks. Okay, there's 5,500 banks. So if you're sitting there going, well, you know, Troy's got the inside track and he's got all this. I don't. Mind you, our company is my wife and I. Okay, and we've got VAs that, you know, third party supporting. It's just my wife and I. I don't have time to call 5,500 banks. I just don't. I don't know anybody who does. That would be a huge undertaking. That would require a team of people. So the cool thing about it is I've kind of developed over the years relationships with about 50, 52, 53 banks that I constantly maintain relationships with, who constantly send me stuff. But they send me stuff that I don't even buy because we have relationships. And when that stuff comes across my desk and I know an exit strategy for it, I'll buy it, sell it, or I'll buy it and wholesale it, whatever you want to call it, because I don't want to do fix and flip rehabs in Kentucky or Ohio or anything like that. Not because I don't like those states. Never been to Kentucky, but it's not that I don't like those states. It's because they're 1,500 miles away from where I live. And managing those projects would be more than I want to do. So I'll find somebody in that area that'll buy them and I'll make a sweet deal with them. See, the thing about it is I'm not trying to squeeze every last nickel out of that deal. I don't really care about every last nickel. If I can make a deal for myself and I can make a deal with the bank and I can leave some meat on the bone for the next person to do and work their magic and build up their portfolio, then that's a good deal for me. I let them make their money. I make my money. The bank makes their money. Everybody's really, really happy. So that's exactly what I did on that particular deal. Okay? And that just actually came in yesterday. So here's the simplicity of it. You can go to bankdirectconnect.com, www.bankdirectconnect.com, or if you're watching the replay on this and it's on the website, the button's down below. You'll see the 5 trainings that you get with it. You get the bank software, and you get the credit union software as well, which I didn't even have a chance to demo, but it's just as robust as the banking software, and you can tap into the credit unions in your local area, or if you want to go outside of that area, if you've got a partnership in Ohio and you're in Phoenix, you can work on those Ohio banks in that partnership and go forward from there. So lifetime access, one-time fee, a one-time investment, whatever you want to call it, and that's that. Pretty short, sweet, and to the point. So I like it that way. That being said, I hope you guys enjoyed today's webinar and breakfast coffee with Troy. I hope you guys had a great time and love the questions. Thank you so much. They're all amazing questions. And go grab your copy, bankdirectconnect.com, or if you're watching the replay, it's the button below this video, and grab it. It's a one-time investment for lifetime access to a lifetime of deals. And I don't know how much more I can put it on a silver platter for you and actually like literally give it to you without physically going and doing the deal and giving you all the profit. That would be the next thing I would do. And my wife would never let me do that. She'd punch me in the face for doing something like that. She wouldn't do that, but she would not be happy with me doing that. So I'm going to lead you guys to water. I'm going to get you all the way there. I've given you, what the banks have. I've given you the banks in the area, the states, the locations, the phone numbers, the contact information, how to reach out to them, the scripts and how they work. And now it's just a matter of reaching out and finding out what they have, and does that meet your matrix? And if it doesn't, that's okay. Keep building on that relationship with that bank, because they're going to continue to have more. Why? Because they're lenders. They lend money. What happens with lenders? People go into default. Why? Because they go through different seasons of life, and those things happen. So if you're over here and they have that relationship, when that deal goes south, if you provide them an exit strategy in a timely fashion, they're going to give you first right of refusal on it. I've seen it happen time and time and time again. What most people do is they go, what, I called that bank, they didn't have anything that I wanted, so the heck with them, I'm not even going to send them a Christmas card. No, that's not how it works. Keep the relationship alive. Keep the relationship open. Because here's the other secret to that. When you do that and you're working with banks and you're developing those relationships with those people, those head people in charge, guess what bankers do? They hang out with other bankers. Okay, they hang out with other bankers. It's like doctors hang out with doctors, lawyers hang out with lawyers. Bankers hang out with bankers. So you may be talking to one banker and you're developing this relationship, and they don't have anything right that second, or maybe they don't have anything that quarter, or maybe they don't have anything like in that first 2 quarters of the year, but they've got a friend over here at another bank that has a problem, and you'll get referred from this bank over to this bank. And all of a sudden, boom, because you spent the time developing this relationship, you got this relationship too. Okay, we've all done it. We all do that all the time. We get a relationship going with our lawn guy, and he's doing a great job. All of a sudden, we're down the street talking to our neighbor, and our neighbor's over there, griping about mowing his yard. We're like, hey, John, call my guy, call my maintenance guy. Here's his number. All of a sudden, my maintenance guy, because he did a good job with me, is now doing my neighbor's yard too. We see it all the time. Banks are the same way. We think there's like some mystery that they do it differently. They don't do it differently. They do it the same way. They're human beings. They're human beings, just like you and me. So go to bankdirectconnect.com, grab your copy, or if you listen to the replay, it's the button right below. Yeah, so that's where we're at. Guys, have a great day. Have a great week. Take care. God bless. Bye now.